Hello everyone, and welcome back to Game Easy, Roll Good. Today, much like last time, we're going over some more feats in the Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook for 2024. Last time we went over the Origin feats, which are the feats that are attached to the backgrounds in the 2024 Player's Handbook. And today we're going to go over the General feats. Now, all of these General feats have certain prerequisites. The main one for all of them is that they require you to be at least level 4. So we're going to get started. There's a lot of them to go through, so I'm going to try to make this pretty quick because I don't want this to run too long. We're going to start in alphabetical order with the tried and true ability score increase. That's right, the ability score improvement from the +2 to any stat is now a feat. So it, like it says you can increase an ability score of your choice by 2, or increase 2 ability scores of your choice by 1. And this feat, it can increase an ability score above 20. And this is, of course, repeatable, so you can take it more than once. So where am I going to put this one? It is sort of the bread and butter default option. However, I don't think it's something I'm going to want to choose unless I absolutely have to. But when I do choose it, it's something that I do want to choose for a specific purpose to get either one or more ability scores to the next even number. So I think this is kind of the definition of a C tier. I don't want to use it, but when I do want to use it, it's something that I'm actually wanting to use, whereas D tier, I pretty much never want to use it unless I absolutely have to. So moving on, we're going to go to Actor. Actor requires a charisma of level 13 or higher. It gives you an ability score increase, increasing your charisma score by 1 up to 20. It gives you an impersonation feature, which says, while you're disguised as a real or fictional person, you have advantage on charisma, deception, or performance checks to convince other people that you are that person. This is pretty similar to the way it was in 2014. And while I'm going through this, I'm not comparing tier lists as to how I felt that they ranked in 2014. This is just within the confines of 2024. And, full disclosure, I haven't actually played with any of these feats just yet. But I feel like I've been playing the game long enough that I have a pretty good feel for how they'll go. And so next we have the last feature, Mimicry. You can mimic the sounds of other creatures, including speech. A creature that hears the mimicry must succeed on a Wisdom Insight check to determine the effect is faked. DC is 8 plus your charisma modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Again, this is very similar to the one in 2014. It's not the greatest feat, but I do know there's definitely a lot of people who like to play the sort of Master of Disguise or the Trickster. So for those specific builds, especially if you have sort of a reliable talent sort of thing like the Eloquence Bard, where you can have that feature where you can't roll below 10 on deception, you can make these really interesting builds with features like this where you have advantage on deception checks, advantage on performance checks, so you can be really good at convincing people that you're not who you say you are. On that note, I think it's good enough. I'm going to put this at B tier for now. I would definitely take this over an ability score increase, although I would take a lot of things over an ability score increase in most situations. I might move this down later, but I feel pretty confident at B, just because I think, again, the Trickster, the Disguise person, the Master of Disguise, I think is popular enough that it's not quite C tier. Moving on, we're going to go to Athlete. Athlete requires you to have a Strength or Dexterity of 13 plus. It gives you an ability score increase to your Strength or Dexterity score to 1 up to a maximum of 20. It gives you a climb speed equal to your base speed. It gives you the hop up feature, which means when you have the prone condition, you can right yourself with only 5 feet of movement instead of half of your movement. And then jumping, you can make a running, long, or high jump after moving only 5 feet instead of 10 feet. This is okay. Again, most of the feats here, basically all the feats here in 2024, all the general feats are half feats. So they're all going to get this ability score increase. Some give it to different abilities, some give it to anyone that you like. Most of them give it to one or certain ability scores. So I'm not going to wait in on those too much. Overall, I think Athlete is a little underwhelming. There's so many things that I would take before it. I don't think it's quite useless. I don't want to say it's D tier, but I am going to put this one down here in C tier. It'd have to be for something pretty specific for me to consider this. Next up, we're going to Charger. Charger requires a Strength or Dexterity of 13 plus. Gives you an ability score increase to your Strength or Dexterity plus 1 to a max of 20. It gives you improved dash. When you take the dash action, your speed increases by 10 feet for that action. Charge attack, it says if you move at least 10 feet in a straight line toward a target immediately before hitting it with a melee attack as part of the attack action, choose one of the following effects. Gain 1d8 bonus to the attack's damage roll, or push the target up to 10 feet away if it is no more than one size larger than you. You can use this benefit only once on each of your turns. So this one's pretty good. The improved dash is kind of whatever, but the charge attack is actually pretty interesting because one thing to keep in mind is that, weapons have weapon masteries now for the classes that get them. And one of those masteries is the push mastery, which pushes creatures 10 feet away from you. So that is a pretty good combo to constantly either set up a follow-up attack that does a little more damage or a follow-up attack that pushes them even further away, because I believe, if I remember correctly, that the weapon mastery, the push mastery, is repeatable. You can keep pushing them on every attack, whereas this one specifically is only once per turn. But for example, let's say I just wanted to push a creature as much as I wanted to. I have 2 attacks. I hit them with my first attack, push them 10 feet away, and then I use my charger to do the charge attack, hit them again, and then push them 10 feet from the push mastery, and then additional 10 feet from the charge attack to push them 30 feet within one turn, which I think pushing is going to be pretty popular in 2024. I think there might be a lot of teamwork built around that. So I'm going to value this one pretty well. I don't think it's quite A tier, but because of that synergy, I'm going to put that right up here in B tier. Do I think it's better than Actor? Yeah, I think it's probably about on the same as Actor. I mean, it's not the same level of utility, but I think people will kind of go for it for same or similar reasons that someone would take Actor for. Okay, moving on, we have Chef. It's a bigger feat, so don't mind it covering the tier list for now. Gives you, interestingly, it doesn't have any prerequisites as far as ability score goes. So it does give you an ability score increase to your Constitution or Wisdom score, +1 to a maximum of 20. Cooks utensils, you gain proficiency in cooks utensils if you don't already have it. It's strange that it doesn't. I can't remember if I know in the 2014 Player's Handbook, if you doubled up on a proficiency, you got to choose a different proficiency of the same type instead. I don't know if that language still exists. I'll have to look that up a little bit later. Because if you already have the cook's utensils, which I guess if you were planning on taking this feat, you would have intentionally not taken them, but who knows? It'd be nice if you could replace it if you already have cook's utensils. Next feature is replenishing meal. As part of a short rest, you can cook special food if you have ingredients and the cook's utensils on hand. You prepare enough of this food for a number of creatures equal to 4 plus your proficiency bonus. So that's a minimum of 6 at level 4. At the end of a short rest, any creature who eats the food and spends 1 or more hit dice to regain hit points gains an extra 1d8 hit points. So this is very similar to the Song of Rest feature from Bards, which is actually missing from the 2024 Bard. So if you liked that feature and you want to be able to add that sort of recovery during short rests, you might think about picking up this feat. Lastly, it has bolstering treats. With 1 hour of work or when you finish a long rest, you can cook a number of treats equal to your proficiency bonus. If you have the ingredients and cook's utensils on hand. These special treats last for 8 hours after being made. A creature can use a bonus action to eat one of these treats and gain a number of temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. So you get the sort of Song of Rest feature, you get proficiency with cook's utensils, which of course is necessary for the rest of the feat. And then that last feature, I think it's weaker than it was in 2014. Temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus is not a lot, even at high levels. So I'm not really that excited about that one. I wish that was a little beefier. You do get how many? You only get you only get proficiency bonus number of treats, and then you can only gain a temp hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. I don't know. I'm not super impressed by that one. I don't think it's quite. This is pretty niche. I don't think it's D tier. There are definitely things that I know are D tier in these feats here. I'm gonna feel pretty comfortable putting this at C tier. I think I would take an ability score increase over most of these. Maybe athlete I wouldn't. Maybe there are situations where I choose athlete over it. I'm not going to worry too much about putting one thing over the other, but let's continue. There's, again, a lot of feats to go through. Moving forward, we have Crossbow Expert. So this requires a dexterity of 13 plus. Gives you +1 to dexterity up to 20. allows you to ignore the loading property of hand crossbows, heavy crossbows, and light crossbows, and it allows you to load a piece of ammunition even if your hands are full. One thing to note regarding the loading property, so before you have a magical, like one specific magical weapon, like say a heavy crossbow, and I covered this in my ranged weapons video, you can actually work around the loading property to begin with. So if you have more than one attack, so the loading property, it says that you can't make more than one attack with that weapon per action. So you can't make more than one attack per your attack action, bonus action, or reaction if you could make more than one attack during those times. But what you can do is just switch weapons, because we can switch weapons with each attack now. You can stow or draw one. So let's say I start the turn with a heavy crossbow in hand. I load it, shoot it, I stow it at the end of that attack, and then at the beginning of my next attack, I draw a different heavy crossbow, load it, shoot it, and I never had to worry about the loading property other than the fact that I'm using 2 crossbows to work around it. I think you'll still want Crossbow Expert just to work around that with a heavy crossbow, but Crossbow Expert, by and large, only benefits hand crossbows, and we'll see why in a second. So continuing, we have firing and melee. Being within 5 feet of an enemy doesn't impose disadvantage on your attack rolls with crossbows. Lastly, Dual-Wielding. When you make the extra attack of the light property, because the light property is now the 2-weapon fighting bonus action attack, you can add your ability modifier to the damage of the extra attack if that attack is with the crossbow that has a light property, if you aren't already adding your modifier to the damage. So the only crossbow with a light property is the hand crossbow. The light crossbow is not a light weapon for some reason. So by and large, this only affects hand crossbows. The firing and melee, if you're using a heavy crossbow or even a light crossbow, those have a pretty respectable minimum range. So you shouldn't necessarily be in melee range. And if you're going to be playing a ranged character, I think you should be planning around other ways that you can get out of melee range if it comes up. But this is a fine way to do it. I really, even in 2014, I didn't like this feat because it felt too mandatory. I don't like the fact that the loading property kind of exists. I understand why it exists, but I don't like that it requires a feat to work around it. I know this is good, so I don't want to punish it too much. I'm going to put this at B tier for now. Although again, I don't like it. And I think that's mainly part of me being salty that Sharpshooter was nerfed so heavily. But we'll get to that when we get there. All right, moving on to Crusher. Now, all of these particular damage type feats, Crusher, Piercer, and Slasher. Let me cover this real quick, and then I want to go into that a little bit further. So Crusher doesn't have any ability score prerequisites, but it buffs your strength or constitution by 1 to a maximum of 20. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals a bludgeoning damage, you can move it 5 feet to an unoccupied space if the target is no more than one size larger than you. And then when you critically hit with a bludgeoning attack, attack rolls against that creature have advantage until the start of your next turn. So that's a very fun feature as well. Again, the push, I talked about pushing earlier with the charger attack. I think pushing is going to be very popular in 2024 rules. However, with these particular damage type feats, I have a feeling that with the introduction of masteries, and I think the way that resistances might change, how you blanket resistance to bludgeoning, slashing, and piercing might be less common, but you'll see like bludgeoning on this one, slashing on this one, piercing on this one. So you might want to be carrying around different weapons. So having a dedicated feat to one type of weapon damage might not be the best thing anymore. However, I do think Crusher is very good. I think it's the best, or at least the most fun of all of them, because of the push and because of giving everyone advantage against that creature if you critically hit. So I'm going to put this one at B tier as well. I don't think it's good enough to be an A tier, simply because if it turns out that wielding one kind of weapon is perfectly fine, maybe I would consider it an A, but even then I think it's just a high B. All right, moving on, we're going to go on to Defensive Duelist. This one requires a dexterity of 13 plus. It gives you a +1 to your dexterity up to 20. And he has a parry feature that says, if you're holding a finesse weapon and another creature hits you with a melee attack, you can use a reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your armor class, potentially causing the attack to miss you. You gain this bonus to your AC against melee attacks until the start of your next turn. So this is kind of like the shield spell, sort of a scaling version that starts off at +2 and then +6 by the level 20, specifically for dex-based characters using finesse weapons, although, even a wizard could pick this up if they really wanted to. However, worth noting that it only works against melee attacks. Any sort of melee attack can be a melee spell attack, melee weapon attack, doesn't matter, any melee attack. But the initial AC boost as well as the continuous A boost only benefit melee attacks. So if an archer is gunning you down, it's not useful against that. It's fine. If it worked against all types of attacks, if this was basically a free shield spell for melee characters or for the cheeky wizard who wants to just carry around a dagger so they can parry, it would be better. But I feel pretty good putting this at C tier. Moving on, we're going to go on to Dual Wielder. Now, I'm a big fan of Dual Wielder in 2024, and again, my very first video, as rough of a video as that was, I'm really happy kind of where Dual Wielding seems to be. My opinion might change as people start playing the game and discovering more, more actual cases of which weapon style is better than the others. But I'm very happy with the way this one turned out. It doesn't give you a +1 bonus to your AC anymore. It does increase your dexterity potentially, which can give you an AC bonus, but that's not a true bonus. However, I'm just going to go through this one real quick. I feel like I'm going to put this one up at S tier because I think it's definitive for the dual wielding playstyle. If you're going to be dual wielding, especially melee weapons, you're going to pick up this feat no matter what you're doing, and it's worth picking up now, actually. So I'm very happy with it. Moving on, we have Durable. Durable doesn't have an ability score prerequisite, but it does boost your Constitution by 1 up to 20. It gives you Defy Death, which gives you advantage on all death saving throws. And it gives you Speedy Recovery, so as a bonus action, you can expend one of your hit point dice, roll the die, and gain a number of hit points equal to the roll. Not all of them can be great. Advantage on death saving throws is fine. I would rather not be making death saving throws. I'd rather have something that maybe, if I'm worried about defenses, there's maybe some other options in the feats here that I could probably take or look at. Speedy Recovery, it's basically, the second wind from a fighter, but it's just worse because all you do is roll the die and that's it. You don't get to add anything to it. So, this isn't a bad feat, but I don't think I would ever choose it. So I think this is going to be our first D tier, D for Durable. Okay, moving on, we got Elemental Adept. The only requirement here, beyond being level 4, of course, is having the spellcasting or pact magic feature. You gain the following benefits. You get to increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 up to 20. You get to choose one of the following damage types of acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. Spells you cast of the chosen type ignore resistance to that type. And in addition, when you roll damage for a spell that you cast that deals that damage type, you can treat any one on the damage die as a 2. So basically just gives you a damage floor for that particular element. And this is repeatable, so you can take this more than once, choosing a different element type each time. Again, it's going to depend on how the resistances play out. If you want to build a pure pyromancer, you might want to take this if there's a lot of fire resistances. It doesn't do anything for immunity. So if you're going into the 9 hells, you might be like, I can't even build a pyromancer or any sort of fire mage at all. Again, I feel like this is pretty. Man, is this a D tier? Is this a D tier feat? I mean, it's definitely at least C, right? I'm trying to think, what would I take over this? I'm going to put this at D tier. If I remember, I'll try to come back, because there are things in the D tier that I just legitimately don't like. Elemental Adept is not one of them. But I just don't think it's useful enough that I would ever realistically take it, unfortunately. So I don't hate it. I'll even put it at the top of D tier here because it's like C.5. But I think the C tier feats are honestly more useful than this. All right, moving on. We have what I just do, Elemental Adept. We're going to move on to Fey-Touched. Fey-Touched is essentially unchanged. There's no ability score prerequisite, but it buffs your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by score by 1 up to 20. You get one level 1 spell from the Divination or Enchantment School of Magic. You always have that, and the Misty Step spell prepared. You can cast each of these once without using a spell slot, and then once you cast either spell this way, you can't cast it that way again until you finish a long rest. And then you can cast them using your spell slots if you do. Your spellcasting ability modifier for the spells is the one you boosted with this feat. Fey-Touched is as great as it's always been. There has been a little bit of movement in the spell schools. Some spells are a different school now than there were before. I don't know that it's made any big changes in the divination or enchantment school of magic, at least at level 1. So I don't know that there are any big new spells that you can get that you couldn't before. But it's still, I mean, the reason you take this spell is, this feat is for Misty Step. Getting that on any character is good, even if it's only once per day. So I think this is kind of the definition. Is this A? I think it is. I think the Misty Step is good enough that I'll put this at A. I might consider it a low A, high B, just because it's so situational, because it boosts your mental stats. And if you're, if you're a martial character, you might not take this until later in the game, unless you're like a Gish of some kind and you're boosting your mental stats. But I think it's again on the back of Misty Step and the enchantment spells. Like there's, you can get Hex that way. Dissonant Whispers is a fun one to get sometimes. So I think on the back of just the spells that you can get, I'll put it at A for now. Moving on, we got Grappler. Grappler requires a strength or dexterity of 13. It lets you boost your strength or dexterity by 1 up to 20. It gives you punch and grab. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike as part of the attack action on your turn, you can use both the damage and grapple option. You can use this benefit only once per turn. So normally the way you initiate a grapple in 2024 is that you make an unarmed strike, and when you hit, instead of doing damage, you can choose to have the creature make a saving throw, and if they fail the saving throw, then they're grappled by you. So this feature lets you both do damage and initiate that grapple, but you can only do that particular initiation of the grapple and doing the damage at the same time once per turn. The next feature says attack advantage. You have advantage on attack rolls against creatures grappled by you. Fast Wrestler. You don't have to spend extra movement when to move a creature who's grappled by you if the creature is your size or smaller. So this feat has come a very long way since 2014, when Grappler was actually the worst feat for grappling. I think Tavern Brawler was the better one, or there was a different one that was better. I believe it was Tavern Brawler. But now in 2024, particularly the ability to once per turn both deal damage and initiate the grapple is really cool. Having advantage on creatures grappled by you, also very cool. I think that always should have been the case. I think it was the case in 2014, but you had to pin them and restrain them, and you were both restrained, so it wasn't actually, I don't know. It was really bad in 2014, but now it's great. And then Fast Wrestler, not having to spend extra movement to move grappled creatures. Again, monks are going to go nuts with this, but even for non-monks who have, decent strength or decent ability to make an unarmed strike, you're going to want this. And the combos alone that you can pull off with this, with grappling a creature and dragging them all over the place, is going to probably break the game in some ways. So I think on that note, it is not only so good just on its own, but it's so good. The ceiling on it is so high that I have to put this at S tier. Grappler is going to cause some crazy turns in combat for sure. I want to pull it off myself. I want to see people pull it off. I'm excited for this one. Great Weapon Master. Great Weapon Master has changed quite a bit in 2024. It now requires requires a strength of 13 plus. It buffs your strength by 1 up to 20. It has heavy weapon mastery, so when you hit a creature with a weapon that has the heavy property as part of the attack action on your turn, you can cause the weapon to deal extra damage to that target. The extra damage equals your proficiency bonus. It also has the Hue property. This says immediately after you score a critical hit with a melee weapon, or reduce a creature to 0 hit points with one, you can make an extra 1 attack with the same weapon as a bonus action. So the big change here is that you no longer have the -5 to hit for plus 10 damage. That has been dropped down to only applying extra damage during your attack action, and then that damage only equals your proficiency bonus. However, you don't have a hit penalty anymore, so you're hitting more often just for less damage, and you can't apply that damage to all of your attacks just during your attack action. However, this is still very good, and I think this is a very good trade-off where it doesn't feel like so overwhelming. However, I will say that other weapon damage types, like Dual-Wielding, again, was pretty close in the video that I did comparing them. However, this kind of pigeonholes the martial, the ranged attackers, the people using longbows and heavy crossbows. If you want to do the most damage as a ranged character, you kind of have to use those two weapons with this feat, and this feat doesn't help those weapons with needing strength, and the hue feature doesn't benefit ranged weapons. I am going to put this at an A. I would say this would be an S tier feat if at least the hue feature benefited ranged weapons. I would also definitely give it also an S tier if it also, in addition to that, allowed you to boost your dexterity in addition. However, this is still a very great feat. If you can use it, you should be using it. But because it doesn't help ranged weapons, and because ranged weapons are kind of in a pickle in 2024, I'm going to drop this one down. Maybe I'm being mean. You can yell at me in the comments. I don't care. Still a very good feat. I'm going to give it an A. Sorry. Moving on. Heavy Armor Master. So this one requires heavy armor training, of course. This one allows you to increase your constitution or strength score by 1 up to 20. And it gives you a damage reduction when you're hit by an attack while you're wearing heavy armor. Any bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage dealt to you by that attack is reduced by an amount equal to your proficiency bonus. So this isn't crazy. So the way that damage reduction works is that when you get hit by an attack that you reduce damage on, you reduce the numerical damage first and then you apply resistance. So there's no way to necessarily reduce the attack to 0 by like reducing it in half by a bunch and then applying a flat damage reduction to that. However, I still wonder how crazy you can get with a build like this. Again, -6 damage isn't crazy. Even with resistance, I still want to build around this, but I'm going to put this in D tier. Well, shoot. Because I know what's coming next, and I don't want to compare it to that. I think it's still better than that. I'm going to put this at a very low C tier. Heavy Armor Master, sorry. Very low C tier. I would probably never take this, but I'm at least interested to see, what are the boundaries with this one, for now at least. So let's move on to heavily armored. This requires medium armor training, gives you an ability score increase to your constitution or strength plus 1 up to 20, and just gives you training with heavy armor proficiency. That's all it does. I'm going to tell you right now, this is going straight into D tier. My problem with pretty much all of these armor feats is that they require the previous armor's proficiency, like heavy requires medium requires light. If it didn't have that, I would probably rate these higher, at least a C tier. I really want to be, let me play a buff wizard that has heavy armor. I think that's fine. I don't see anything necessarily wrong with that. If you look at the second edition, there's a second edition of a book called Winds of Netheril that goes over the Netherese cities that, the famous Karsus ruled over. There's actually stat blocks for the mages in those books. They're not like full stat blocks, but they have like the basic stats for them. Karsus had a 19 strength, and like most of the mages in those cities, at least they had above 10, like 11, 13. It wasn't uncommon for them to be a little bit jacked, And even if you've played Rime of the Frost Maiden, there's a, spoiler alert, there's another city buried in the ice in that book. And there's even basically like a sports ball field that's in that little city. So, these Netherese mages, they didn't skip leg day. So let me play a wizard that can do strength without having to make a bunch of sacrifices or take a bunch of unnecessary feats. Let me do it. That's all I say. But yeah, this feat is trash. Let's move on. Inspiring Leader. Inspiring Leader requires wisdom or charisma of 13 or higher. It lets you boost your wisdom or charisma by 1 up to 20. And it gives you bolstering performance. When you finish a short or long rest, you can give an inspiring performance, a speech, a song, or a dance. When you do so, choose up to 6 allies, which can include yourself, within 30 feet of yourself who witness the performance. The chosen creatures gain temporary hit points equal to your character level plus the modifier of the ability you increased with this feat, either wisdom or charisma. This one's very good. If I was playing we talked about the musician origin feat that lets you give inspiration to your allies. If I was playing that character, I might also consider Inspiring Leader if I'm a wisdom or charisma based character. I'm going to give this one a solid shoot. Is this also S tier? It might be. Because, I mean, the fact that it's character level plus the modifier, like your character level gets pretty high up there. Like even, like I have someone who has the old one right now and it's still a similar formula. And it's like 14 temporary hit points after each, pretty much after each long rest. Yeah, I'm gonna give this one an S tier. I think this is so good. If you can fit it somewhere in your party, you should be getting this one, I think. All right, let's move on. Inspiring Leader, moving on to Keen Mind. So Keen Mind has changed quite a bit from 2014. It requires an intelligence of 13 plus. It gives you a boost to intelligence, plus 1 up to 20. It gives you lore knowledge, so you choose one of the following skills: Arcana, History, Investigation, Nature, or Religion. If you lack proficiency in the chosen skill, you gain proficiency in it. If you already have proficiency, you gain expertise in it. It also gives you quick study. You can take the study action as a bonus action. I can't remember offhand which skills you can use as part of the study action. I don't remember if it is all of the intelligence-based skills. I believe it is. There is a weird thing with Observant, I know, that I'll point out in a little bit. However, I still think that this one, much like the Observant feat, is a far cry from what it used to be in 2014. I know the 2014 rules for these feats were a little kind of a headache for the DMs. But as players, we certainly enjoy using them. I'm going to put this one at a solid... Shoot. You know what? It's really going to depend on how good the study action is, if we get a lot of chances to use that in combat or in certain situations. But I certainly don't see it coming up often, just off the top of my head. So I'm going to put this one as a C tier. I'd probably take it before Athlete, though. So let's put it there. All right, moving on, we're going to go to Lightly Armored. So similar to the Heavily Armored feat. Again, this one doesn't have any prerequisite, of course, because there's nothing below light armor. It increases your strength or dexterity score by 1 up to 20. And it gives you proficiency with light armor as well as shields. So unlike in 2014, shields were attached to the medium armor proficiency feat, but now it's attached to light armor. So unlike the heavy armor and the medium armor feats, I value this one actually a little bit higher because me personally, I have a beef with the mage armor spell, the fact that it exists and needs to exist. Again, I just want to play a buff wizard. That's all I want to do. Let me play a wizard with heavy armor without having to take multi-classes or 5 different feats to get it. I do like the fact that this one gives you shields now, and I would strongly consider it as maybe like a 3rd or 4th feat on a wizard or sorcerer even, just because I don't like having to cast mage armor. So I'm going to put this at a C tier. I don't think it's definitely not a D tier. I understand it's very niche. It's my own personal biases and personal feelings about the game on this one. Let's put that above you. That's fine. I'm gonna put it right there. That's how I feel about Lightly Armored. The fact that it gives you shields is actually very good. Definitely worth considering if you're just looking for a quick AC boost. Sometimes multi-classing is better, but let's move on. Going into Mage Slayer. Mage Slayer has had quite the glow up. Mage Slayer in 2024, no prerequisites besides being level 4 or higher. Allows you to increase your strength or dexterity by 1 up to 20. As Concentration Breaker, when you deal damage to a creature that is concentrating, it has disadvantage on the saving throw it makes to maintain concentration. So again, very similar to 2014. And lastly, it has Guarded Mind. So if you fail an intelligence, wisdom, or charisma saving throw, you can cause yourself to succeed instead. Once you use this benefit, you can't use this again until you finish a short or long rest. That is, you get a legendary resistance for mental saving throws once per short rest, or once per rest, essentially. That is gross. I can see maybe some DMs feeling really bad about this because they want to get their players and they might even ban this feat. I would hope that they don't. They shouldn't. I'm not saying you should, find other things to do, but that is incredibly strong. That is way better than the feat in 2014. You no longer get the reaction attack when someone casts a spell next to you, but I'm not going to worry about that too much when I can just have a legendary resistance once per short rest. That's crazy. Easiest S tier, possibly so far. I mean, I'm going to put it so high. It's the top one, in my opinion. Maybe Inspiring Leader. We'll put Inspiring Leader. Anyone can take it as well. All right, let's move on. Mage Slayer is great. You should take it if you can. Martial Weapon Training. Martial Weapon Training, no prerequisites besides being 4 or higher. Increase your strength or dexterity by 1 up to 20. Just gives you proficiency with martial weapons. I'm going to put this straight in D tier. Quick and easy, painless. If you don't have proficiency with a martial weapon, I would ask why, and is there a better way to do it? Like, you know, can you afford taking a 1-level dip in fighter and getting 3 masteries in a fighting style and, you know, 1 use of second wind? I think taking a feat just to have martial weapon proficiency is, you have to be in a pretty specific situation to even, you know, want to be doing that. So easy D tier, no problem. Next is Medium Armor Master. You know, it requires medium armor training, increases your strength or dex by 1 up to 20. While you're wearing medium armor, you can add 3 rather than 2 to your AC if you have a dexterity of 16 or higher. You know, this one's fine. Where did I put? I mean, yeah, we'll say C tier. This is where I put Heavy Armor Master. It's not bad. It makes medium armor basically the same as, you know, a full plate if you have the best heavy armor, or sorry, the best medium armor. You know, it bridges that little gap. I don't think it's really worth going after. But if you want to, I wouldn't blame you if you're just trying to increase your AC a little bit. But even then, if you don't have shields and you can wield a shield, just get light armor, the lightly armored feat, right? And get a shield proficiency. I'd rather do that. That's +2 instead of +1. Anyway, let's move on. Moderately armored. Requires light armor training. Increases your strength or dex by 1 up to 20. Gives you training with medium armor. Again, this one's going into D tier. Easy D tier. These are going low D tier. I don't like either of these ones. If you need medium armor proficiency, find a better way to do it, in my opinion. Going on to Observant. Observant is another feat that has changed quite a bit from 2014, as I mentioned with Keen Mind. This one requires intelligence or wisdom of 13 or higher. Allows you to boost intelligence or wisdom by 1 up to 20. It gives you Keen Observer, so you choose one of the following skills: Insight, Investigation, or Perception. If you lack proficiency, you get proficiency. If you have proficiency, then you gain expertise in that chosen skill. Lastly, it gives you Quick Search. You can take the search action as a bonus action. And the one thing worth noting here, I don't think they've changed it just yet, but the search action doesn't include investigation. So it's a little strange that this feat lets you choose investigation to have proficiency or expertise in, but then the bonus action that you get can't use that skill. So, you know, hopefully there's some errata or something that goes in to kind of bridge that gap. That's kind of an oversight. I do feel that investigation is sort of a search. You know, it can be study, it can be search. It depends on what you're doing. I could see a DM calling for either or depending on the situation. So I'm going to put this exactly where I put Keen Mind, right down there in the C tier. You know, it's not bad. It's really going to depend on how good the search action is within initiative rolls. But, you know, I think there's plenty of things, even as a caster, that I would take before these feats. All right, moving on to Piercer. Piercer is just as it was in 2014. So no ability score prerequisite, which is nice. Strength or dex +1 up to 20. You can re-roll piercing damage die, and you must use a new roll once per turn. And then when you score a critical hit with piercing damage, you can add an extra damage die to that roll. So it's not bad. It's not great. You know, it's good for ranged weapons because it's the only thing that can really increase their damage if you're not using Great Weapon Master. But even then, it's a far cry from Great Weapon Master. I'm going to put this again down in... It's definitely not as good as Crusher. I'm going to put this down in C tier. Not a problem. Moving on, we have Poisoner. Poisoner has changed maybe a little bit. So it just requires level 4 or higher. Lets you boost your dexterity or intelligence by 1 up to 20. So that's interesting. Mix of both a physical and mental attribute. Gives you potent poison, so when you make a roll that deals poison damage, you ignore resistance to poison damage. Again, that's going to rely on how resistances shake out in the 2024 Monster Manual. The problem with poison damage was never that too many creatures are resistant to it, the problem was that a disproportionate number of creatures are immune to poison damage. even more than there are that are resistant. And again, part of the reason makes sense because constructs typically don't take poison damage at all. They can't be poisoned. Undead often can't be poisoned or can't take poison damage. So there's whole swaths of creatures that just poison doesn't work on them, and that makes sense. And then any creature beyond that also can't be poisoned then is also just kind of adding on to that immunity. So it ends up with this situation where there's way more creatures who are immune to poison, not just resistant. So we'll see how that shakes out. But then it also has brew poison. You gain proficiency in the poisoner's kit. With 1 hour of work using the kit and expending 50 gold worth of materials, you can create a number of poison doses equal to your proficiency bonus. As a bonus action, you can apply that dose to a weapon or a piece of ammunition. Once applied, it retains its potency for 1 minute or until you deal damage with the poisoned item, whichever is shorter. When the creature takes damage from the poisoned item, it must succeed a Constitution saving throw, DC 8 plus the modifier of the ability increased by this feat, plus your proficiency bonus, or it takes 2d8 poison damage and have the poison condition until the end of your next turn. I will say, even if I was considering that far more things are resistant than immune to poison damage in 2024, which I don't know if that's going to be the case. I don't like that this is a save or do nothing. I wish it was save for half. I would even take 1d8 save for half or 2d4 save for half. Because the application of poison goes away regardless of whether they make the save or not. So spending 50 gold, but then to just save and then take no damage, it feels bad. Where do I put this? I feel like that, because again, Constitution is the most popular saving throw among monsters. So it's very possible that this just gets to a point where you're just not able to make this damage happen. And that's the problem. I am going to put this... I'm going to put this in D tier only because I want to see this glow up. I want to be wrong on this one. I just don't think that extra damage is going to come up often enough. It will. I mean, it's probably at early levels, at level 4, it's probably fine in the right situations as long as you're not in a setting where you're dealing with a lot of things that are resistant or not. It doesn't even have to be resistant because obviously you're ignoring resistance now. But things with low con saves, things with no poison immunity at low levels, this is probably fine, although it's still very expensive to do. But at high levels, I think this falls off real fast. I'm willing to be wrong. All right, moving on. We got Polearm Master. It's basically the same as it was in 2014. I'm not going to take the time to read the whole description. However, it's now a half feat. It allows you to boost your dexterity or strength by 1 up to 20. It requires a strength or dexterity of 13 or higher to take. Again, this is a defining feat. I'm going to easily put this one up in S tier. If you're using a polearm, you should be using this feat no matter what. Moving on, we have Resilient. Resilient is it's basically the same as it was in 2014. You can pick any ability score that you want to boost, and you boost that by 1 up to 20, and then you have proficiency in the saving throws of that ability score. I know that this feat is very good. However, Mage Slayer now exists, and depending if you're going to use Resilient to get Wisdom, Intelligence, or a Charisma saving throw, I think you should just take Mage Slayer instead. It doesn't boost that proficiency, but it does give you the legendary resistance once per short rest. And the one thing I always hated about Resilient is that it doesn't let you choose which saving throw you get other than choosing the ability score that's associated with it. I wish you could decouple those things and choose an ability score and then choose a different saving throw if you wanted to. But either way, this is still very good. Easy A tier, easily above Great Weapon Master, above Fey-Touched. I think I skipped one here. Let me drop back down. We have Mounted Combatant. Only requires level 4 or higher. Lets you boost your strength, dexterity, or wisdom up to a maximum of 20. Wisdom probably because of animal handling, because you're using a mount, of course. Gives you Mountain Strike while you're mounted, and you have advantage on attack rolls against any unmounted creature within 5 feet of your mount that is at least one size or smaller than the mount. It gives you Leap Aside. If your mount is subjected to an effect that allows it to make a dexterity saving throw to take half damage, It instead takes no damage if it succeeds the saving throw and only half damage if it fails. So effectively your mount has evasion. For your mount to gain this benefit, you must be riding it, and neither of you can have the incapacitated condition. It also gives you a veer feature. While mounted, you can force an attack that hits the mount to hit you instead if you don't have the incapacitated condition. I like this feat. I've always liked this feat, even in 2014. However, I do understand that it's very niche. It requires very specific builds, very specific the ability to have a mount and get a mount in a dungeon in small places and use it frequently. Of course, the Paladin gets a mount naturally now, so we might see this more often. However, I think this is, again, an easy C tier, very niche. Will come up when you want it to come up, sort of feat. All right. Moving back up the alphabet here, we're going on to Ritual Caster. Ritual Caster requires Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma of 13 or higher. It allows you to boost any of those ability scores by 1 up to 20. It gives you ritual spells. You choose a number of level 1 spells equal to your proficiency bonus that have the ritual tag. You always have those spells prepared, and you can cast them with any spell slots you have. The spellcasting ability is the ability increased by this feat. And whenever your proficiency bonus increases thereafter, you can add 1 additional spell with a ritual tag to the spells always prepared with this feature. Well, that's quite a paragraph, sorry. Out of focus here. I'm going to be a little out of focus. I apologize for that. We'll just see if it finds me again. Quick ritual. With this benefit, you can cast a ritual spell that you have prepared using its regular casting time rather than expending the time for a ritual. Doing so doesn't require a spell slot. Once you cast a spell this way, you can't do this until you finish a long rest. We saw a similar feature on the Order of Scribes Wizard, but now you can pick this up and you can cast a ritual spell for the normal time once per day without expending that spell slot. This has been nerfed from 2014, and I know I said I wasn't going to compare these to 2014, but the 2014 Ritual Caster lets you pick up higher level spells, or did it? Or was that, or am I thinking of the Pact of the Tome feature? I don't remember which one. Either way, you can already pick up ritual spells in different ways, and anyone can cast ritually now. It's not really it's not a class feature anymore. This basically just lets you take more rituals than maybe you normally have access to. However, am I ever going to take the time to take this feat? I don't think it's useless because rituals are very good. Even at level 1, you got your Find Familiars, but if you want Find Familiar, you can just take the Magic Initiate feat, the Origin feat at level 1, right? That basically gets you the one ritual that you want. I don't think there's enough rituals at level 1 to really need this feat to take them. If I could get higher level rituals, I think this would be better. I'm going to put this one in D tier. I don't think it's as bad as, heavily armored, but I'm probably never going to take it. All right, moving on, we have Sentinel. I understand why people love this feat. I love being able to make more attacks. The one thing I always hated about this feat, both as a player even and as a DM, is the halt feature. But real quick, let's go over it. Strength or dexterity required 13 or higher. Lets you boost your strength or dexterity by 1 up to 20. Immediately after a creature within 5 feet of you takes the disengage action or hits a target other than you with an attack, you can make an opportunity attack against that creature. And halt, when you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, that creature's speed becomes 0 for the rest of the turn. So basically it's exactly the same as it was in 2014, except it gives you a strength or dex boost of 1. And it no longer disqualifies you from making the attack, the reaction attack for someone hitting a target other than you, if that person also has the Sentinel feat. So now more than one person can take the Sentinel feat without conflicting with one another in that way. And that attack that you make as a reaction for an enemy hitting someone that's your ally is also now considered an opportunity attack, which also makes that opportunity attack trigger the speed 0 when you hit them. So this is now better. I think it is a problem. I think it's problematically better because now if you also consider, again, the push mastery, which allows you to push someone 10 feet when you hit them, that is not limited to just your turn. So let's say you have a push mastery weapon and you have Sentinel, and you're protecting your squishy wizard. A melee enemy comes up, hits your wizard, you hit them with a push mastery weapon, they get pushed 10 feet away, and now their speed is 0. now they can't get to your wizard at all if they don't have a ranged attack, and their turn is over. So Sentinel, S tier, easy S tier, obviously, but I think it's problematic that it's S tier. It's not good. I wish they would have changed some way that halt feature. I think it's just a little too strong, especially now that we can push things around and get them out of the way, reduce them to 0. Combats are going to be really nutty in 2024. I don't know that Sentinel was changed for the better. Again, I really like the feat. I like being able to make more attacks. I have never liked the halt feature. All right, moving on, we have Shadow-Touched. This is the the younger child of Fey-Touched. We have no prerequisites besides being level 4 or higher. Again, you boost your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 up to 20. You gain 1 spell from the illusion or necromancy school of magic. You always have that spell and the invisibility spell prepared. You can cast each of them for free. You can't do that again until you take a long rest, and then you can cast them with your spells. And the spell casting ability modifier for these spells is the one increased by the feat. Basically exactly the same. It is worth noting that I know that the Wrathful Smite is now considered a necromancy spell, so that is something that you can choose now with the shadow magic feature of this feat. But generally, this one has always been sort of playing second fiddle to Fey-Touched because Misty Step is so strong. Still kind of worth considering, I think. I will be nice. I think. Let me take a look. I will. Yeah, this is B tier. Yeah, that's B tier easy. I would take this over Actor for sure, right? I like having more spells, necessarily more than, the ability to mimic things the vast majority of the time. Easy B tier, I think. All right, moving on. We have Sharpshooter. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to put this feat right in the trash. I hate what they did to this feat. I do think it needed to be brought down, but I'm not gonna rehash what I said in the ranged weapons video. I think what they did to this feat is just far too much. I don't think it's useful the vast majority of the time anymore. The vast majority of the time it's just gonna be +1 dex. You can read this in your own time. I don't like this feat anymore. I'm sorry. Let's move on. I don't want to even look at it. Moving on, we got Shield Master. This requires shield training, obviously. It gives you ability score increase, strength score by 1 up to 20. It gives you Shield Bash. If you attack a creature within 5 feet of you as part of the attack action and hit with a melee weapon, you can immediately bash the target with your shield if it's equipped, forcing the target to make a strength saving throw, DC 8 plus your strength modifier and proficiency bonus. On a failed save, you either push the target 5 feet from you or cause it to have the prone condition, your choice, and you can only do this once per turn. Lastly, you have Interposed Shield. If you're subjected to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, you can use a reaction to take no damage if you succeed on the saving throw if you're holding a shield. So not quite evasion level. You're not, it requires your reaction unlike evasion. You're not taking half damage on a fail unlike evasion. So that last one is a little, it's not as good as it could be, but interestingly, Shield Bash, it is no longer, I think in 2014 it required your bonus action. And that's not the case. This is just another free ability to push or shove prone a creature as long as you're holding a shield. I think that is worth considering if you're going to be a sword and board kind of player. So for that, this isn't doing damage, but it is free action economy to push or shove, push or shove something prone. So I'm going to put this in B tier. I would actually consider this in certain circumstances. Again, it's anything that's free. I automatically love it. So if I can just not have to use a bonus action or reaction or whatever to do something, I'm always a fan of it. All right, moving on. Skill Expert. Skill Expert is exactly the same as it was in 2014. No ability score prerequisites. You can increase any ability score by 1 up to 20. You can choose any proficiency of your choice in a skill, and you get expertise in any skill of your choice, as long as you have at least proficiency in it. I think this is an easy A tier. A lot of builds rely on this to get expertise in a certain feat. With the changes to the way that grapples are initiated, I don't know if we'll see as many skill expert, because usually you'd use that to get expertise in athletics, so you could be a really good grappler. I still think the fact that this lets you do any ability score, any proficiency, any expertise is still very good compared to the more niche things like Keen Mind, Observant, or anything else that gives you a specific proficiency. I'll put that in A tier. I think that's worth it if you need, a proficiency and an expertise. Moving on, we have Skulker. Skulker requires dexterity of 13 or higher. Boosts your dexterity by 1 up to 20. Gives you blind sight within 10 feet. Fog of War, you exploit the distractions of battle, gaining advantage on any dexterity stealth check you make as part of a hide action during combat. And then Sniper, when you make an attack roll while hidden and the roll misses, making the attack roll doesn't reveal your location. Extremely situational. The blind side is fine, but you can also just get the blind fighting style just by taking 1 level in fighter. So I can't think. I've never really played with the Skulker feat, even in 2014. I don't know that I would now. Yeah, I don't think I could ever see myself taking this. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's better than anything above it. All right, let's move on. We got the Slasher feat. So Slasher feat, exactly the same as it was in 2014. I'm just going to kind of rush by this one. I'm going to put it exactly where I put Piercer, wherever I put that, down here in C tier. Moving on from Slasher, we're going to go to Speedy. Now, Speedy is actually taking the place of the Mobile feat in the 2014 Player's Handbook. Don't know why they renamed it, but it requires a Dexterity or Constitution of 13 plus. It gives you an ability score increase to Dexterity or Constitution by 1 up to 20. Your speed increases by 10 feet. It gives you dash over difficult terrain. So when you take the dash action on your turn, difficult terrain doesn't cost you extra movement for the rest of that turn. And it gives you agile movement where opportunity attacks have disadvantage against you. So you can no longer avoid opportunity attacks completely like you could with the Mobile feat after hitting someone with a melee attack. However, all opportunity attacks, regardless, have disadvantage against you. Your speed increases by 10 feet. That's really good. Dash over difficult terrain, pretty situational, but nice to have. But I do like that you can boost your Constitution by this, because 10 feet of movement, especially for a martial character, is very good, especially if you're not a class that already has boosted movement like a barbarian or a monk. If I'm looking to increase my Constitution, I might actually consider taking this at some point in the game. It's nothing I'm going to take I'm not going to take it on early unless I'm doing a very specific like movement-based build, but I would still consider this. So I'm going to put this as a B tier. So let's move on from that one. Again, I'm going a little long here, but let's just go through it. We're almost to the end. We got Spell Sniper, level 4, of course, level 4 plus required. You need the Spellcasting or Pact Magic feature. You can boost your Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma by 1 up to 20. You bypass cover with your spell attacks, ignoring half and 3/4 cover. Casting in melee, being within 5 feet of an enemy doesn't impose disadvantage on your attack rolls with spells. That's, pretty nice sometimes, especially if you're playing the, what do you call them? What's it called? The Arcane Trickster or the Eldritch Knight. I still don't think you'll need it in those, but if you want to no longer have disadvantage on those, you can do it. Lastly, increased range. You can, when you cast a spell that has a range of at least 10 feet and requires you to make an attack roll, you can increase that spell's range by 60 feet. So you're no longer greatly increasing the range like the old Spell Sniper, but even then, a lot of those builds were just memes doing, funny things with, Spell Sniper and the Eldritch, I can't remember whatever the invocation was that increased the range of Eldritch Blast. Spell Sniper, very, very, very situational. Would I take it over any of the... Would I take this over Keen Mind or Observant? Would I take this over Keen Mind or... I don't think this is a B tier. I wouldn't take this over Shadow-Touched. How do I feel? If I'm a Warlock, I might consider this because I'm making a lot of spell attack rolls. But, another thing about casters is that they don't make purely attack rolls. They have a lot of saving throws. I don't think it's D tier. I'm gonna say a very low C. Very low C. Not quite useless, but again, I'd have to be doing something very specific to even want to do it. Moving on, we have Telekinetic. I'm going to tell you right now that I have a particular bias towards Telekinetic, specifically. Telepathic, I think, is also decent. Telekinetic is pretty much the same as it was in 2014. Boosts your Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma by 1 up to 20. Gives you the Mage Hand spell with no components, and it's invisible. So it's it's literally just like you have telekinesis, essentially. I mean, not the telekinesis spell, but the ability to move things without people realizing that you're the one moving them necessarily. And then it gives you the Telekinetic shove. So as a bonus action, you can shove one creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself. When you do so, the target must succeed a strength saving throw against the DC 8 plus ability modifier of the square increased by this feat plus proficiency, and they're either moved 5 feet toward or away from you. The one wording change that's in 2024 from 2014 is that the 2014 version of the feat said that they can willingly fail to save. However, in 2024, all saves can now be willingly failed. That is just a base function of the game now. So that text has been removed from this feat, but that functionality still exists. I really love this bonus action. I take it on any caster that doesn't have a regular bonus action, and I'm pretty much using it every turn. I'm finding some reason to use this every turn in combat when I can, whether it's to pull an an ally out of a grapple, to push an enemy off a ledge, to push a heavy thing onto an enemy. There's so many things you can do with this that I really love this feat. I take it almost anytime I can. I'm gonna put this at an A tier based on the push action alone. You can call me biased. I don't care. This is my list. If you want to make your own list and put it down lower, please do. But I think it's A tier. I will take this on any caster that I can. Telepathic. I don't feel quite as strongly about this one as I do Telekinetic, but let's take a look at it. Again, it's pretty much the same as it was in 2014. So you get the boost to your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1 up to 20. You can telepathically speak with a creature within 60 feet of yourself. Your utterances are in a language you know, and the creature only understands you if he knows the language. And the communication doesn't give the creature the ability to respond to you telepathically. Pretty much exactly the same. You always have detect thoughts prepared. You can cast it without a spell slot, or spell components. So spell components again means that they can't tell that you're casting the spell when you cast it. And you must finish a long rest before you can do it this way again. So once per long rest, you can just read someone's mind without them knowing that you're doing it. You can also cast this spell using the spell slots you have of appropriate level. Of course, when you do it that way, it still requires components. And then your spell casting ability for the spell is the ability increased by the feat. Detect thoughts, I think, was slightly buffed in 2024. I think even when you drill deeper into their mind, they still know that you're reading their mind, but it doesn't immediately shut off the what do you call it? It doesn't shut off the spell. I think there's a certain saving throw they need to make before they can actually end the spell. I just really like the fact that you can read people's minds once per day for free, and they can't tell that you're doing it unless you probe deeper. Again, I don't think this is as good as Telekinetic. I think for a lot of, if you're in a very role play, social heavy campaign, very worth taking just for the ability to read minds. I'm gonna put this one at a good old B tier. I do think it's pretty much along the same lines as Shadow-Touched. I do think that Telekinetic and Fey-Touched can probably go hand in hand. Like, I would choose one or the other and not feel bad about them. So I feel pretty good about Telekinetic at a B tier. Moving on, we're almost done here. Warcaster. Warcaster, I think, is the best example of an S tier feat for a caster. And you don't really see much of them up there in the S tier, right? You might consider Fey-Touched and an S tier caster skill. And I'm going to say, if you say that Fey-Touched is S tier, so is Telekinetic. I would not be mad about that. But Warcaster, I think, is the definition of the most balanced, most helpful feat for a caster of any kind. There's not really much of anything to say. It's exactly the same as it was in 2014, except that you can boost your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma up to 1 by 1 up to 20. So it's even better than it was, and it's always been great. So if when you can take it, it's not something you always want to take right away, but I think on any caster you eventually are going to take it just because it's useful to have either advantage on Constitution saving throws, to maintain concentration, to make opportunity attacks when creatures are running away from you, and they never really fixed the somatic component with material cost components that have costs or are consumed. Most of us ignore those at the table anyway, but again, still a very good feat. Easy S tier for casters, not a problem. Lastly, Weapon Master. We're going out with a whimper here. Weapon Master, you increase your strength or dexterity score by 1 up to 20. Your training with weapons allows you to use the mastery property of any simple or martial weapon of your choice, provided you have proficiency with it. So it doesn't give you proficiency with a weapon, it just unlocks the mastery of a particular weapon that you're already proficient with. And then whenever you finish a long rest, you can change what kind of weapon you've mastered, provided that you already have proficiency with it. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like this one. I think it's an easy D tier. I think if you want weapon masteries, you're probably better off just picking up 1 level 1 fighter and getting 3 different masteries that you can switch out. I don't remember. Can you switch them out? I don't remember. But either way, you get 3 of them. That's probably going to be more than you need for most of the time if you're just trying to pick up 1, right? Plus you get the fighting style, plus you get second wind, plus you get armor proficiencies from fighter. I don't think I would ever take weapon master the feat at all. So that is it. That is it for this video. That is all the feats, the general feats, at least in the 2024 Player's Handbook. Again, any feats that aren't pictured here that I didn't say were replaced, such as Speedy and Mobile, all those other feats still exist. You can use them if your DM allows it. But let me know what you think about this list. Let me know where you would put things, if you think I made any missteps, or if there's anything maybe that I misunderstood in one of these feats. I'd be happy to know about it. So again, on your way down to those comments, please hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please hit that subscribe button. And thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.